Wall Street caps off a turbulent week. On a positive note, the Dow Jones closes 550 points higher, buoyed by bullish inflation data. The S&P and the Nasdaq also close with gains of 1% each. Asian markets trade higher on the back of a bullish handover from Wall Street. The Japanese Nikkei trades with gains of over 2% ahead of the Bank of Japan's monetary policy meeting decision due this week. The GIFT Nifty is implying a strong start for the Indian markets. Brent crude trades higher at around $81 a barrel as tensions in West Asia pose risks to supply and demand for oil, while gold prices surge, supported by a fall in U.S. Treasury yields. Dr. Reddy reports first quarter numbers that beat CNBC TV 18's poll expectations. The revenue climbed 14% year on year. The management says that they target double-digit organic growth in India for the full year. Meanwhile, ICICI Bank reported a mixed bag for the first quarter. Advances rise 15% on a year-on-year basis. And in confirmation of a CNBC TV 18 news break, the board of Ultratech Cement has approved the acquisition of 28.42% stake from promoters of India Cements, increasing the company's holding to a total of 32.72%. It's the start of a brand new week. The Nifty is at the cusp of 25,000, and we are here with another edition of Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18 in the Mumbai News Center. I'm Hormuz Fatakia. Let's first take a look at how the Asian markets are faring this morning, and it's a pretty strong start across the Asia Pacific as well. The Nikkei, as we mentioned earlier, is trading with gains of over 2%. The Hang Seng is also trading with gains of 1%, as is the Taiwanese index. So a good start across the Asia Pacific, and that is also courtesy a very strong handover that came from Wall Street on Friday night. And you can pull up the GIFT Nifty as well, and that will show you that the index is also poised for a gap up start, an implied open of 155 points, which suggests that the Nifty might just about start close to the mark of 25,000, which it missed in the earlier days of the last days of June, and is now on the cusp of 25,000 again. But as we mentioned, the handover from the US markets was pretty strong, and the indices there jumped on Friday as investors weighed fresh US inflation data. The Dow Jones rallied over 650 points. The S&P 500 gained over 1%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq also advanced by a similar quantum. Now, over the week, the S&P 500 ended 0.8% in the negative, while the Nasdaq lost over 2%. Meanwhile, the Dow Jones was an outperformer, adding around 0.8% and notched up its fourth consecutive positive week for the first time since the month of May. Now, the PCE price index rose 0.1% in June and was up 2.5% from a year ago, which is in line with the Dow Jones estimates. The positive inflation news has also lifted investors' hopes for more rate cuts this year. CNBC's Rick Santelli joins us with the details.
Personal income and spending in the PCE inflation numbers off for June. Headline coming in light on income, expecting up 0.4%. Cut that in half, up 0.2. Up 0.2 is actually the lightest of the year. You have to go all the way back to October of last year to find a smaller income number change. On the spending side, pretty much nailed by economists and analysts, expecting up 0.3%, comes in up 0.3%. And I do want to point out that revisions are trickling in. Income had a strong last month, up 0.5%. It's now reduced by 0.1 to up 0.4. On the spending side, double. So we end up with up 0.3. Last month's up 0.2 moves to up 0.4. So spending doing much better here, and we have a consumption economy. But accounting for inflation, real spending comes in a little light at up 0.2. Last month upgraded from 0.3 to 0.4. Now let's look at the index. PCE, month over month, up 0.1 as expected, and that's a bit higher than the rear view mirror, which was 0. And if you have to go back and see when the last time we were a little bit higher than 0, that would be April, just a couple months ago, when it was up 0.3%. Now, if we look at the year-over-year PCE price index, up 2.5 exactly as expected, 0.1 lower than the rear view mirror, which was up 2.6. 2.5 equals January and February of this year. To find a lower number, though, you have to go into the Wayback Machine to February of 21 when it was 1.9. Now let's look at the core numbers. Start out with month over month. Expecting up 0.2%, comes in as expected. That's 0.1 warmer than our last look. Our last look was up 1/10. To find a number greater than 2/10, you have to go back a couple months to March of this year.
Rick Santelli there with the details. Now, the new PCE data puts the rate cuts into cement, says Mark Zandi, who is the chief economist at Moody's Analytics. He also said that there is 100% probability for a rate cut from the Federal Reserve in September. Listen in.
The market's up because they think the Fed's going to cut rates. I think there's as you pointed out, 100% probability of a rate cut in September, and today's data just puts that into cement. So I think investors are cheered by the reality that here we are, finally, the Fed's going to start cutting interest rates. If I were king for the day, I would have done it a lot earlier, but it's okay. September's going to be just fine. The core, that's kind of right down the strike zone. And I would point out that harmonized inflation, harmonized consumer expenditure deflator, which excludes the implicit cost of home ownership, which I think the Fed should be doing when trying to gauge inflation and what it means for monetary policy, has been below 2%, the Fed's target, for more than a year on a year-over-year basis. So in my view, we're there. I think they've achieved their objectives.
And that's all we have on the global market action. But how will all of these overnight cues impact our own markets? We have our research team joining in with how the trade setup looks like, the stocks that are likely to be in the news, and of course the FNO setup as well. First up, Vivek joins in to get all the market cues we need to watch out for today. Vivek, good morning. It's a positive handover from Wall Street. The GIFT Nifty also suggesting a gap up. What's the setup looking like?
Good morning, and very good handover from Wall Street. Remember, Wall Street actually had a very volatile week last week, but Friday they ended with strong gains, like you mentioned. Along with that, oil prices too, last week saw quite a bit of volatility, but they ended largely lower. Today morning, there seems to be a bit of a bounce back. Now, talking about the Indian markets, and the strength here is unparalleled, even within the emerging market peers. Friday was another day where you saw record highs. The Nifty continued to end with gains for 8 consecutive weeks, and that going quite far back when we've seen something like this. Along with that, the broader end of the market gained in tandem with the benchmark indices. Advanced decline ratio very, very strong. Now, key to watch, going forward this particular week, IPO, a lot of IPOs also on the anvil. Can the record rally sustain, given the fact that it's a very earnings-heavy week? Along with that, watch out for the entire cement pack as well today. The Ultratech deal is something that the street will watch out for. Results reaction, quite a lot of results post for market hours on Friday. So ICICI Bank, Dr. Reddy, NTPC, Power Grid, Indigo, all of them will react to results today. Key results today: Bharat Electronics, Colgate Palmolive, HPCL and Kalpataru projects. Also, given the fact that Asian markets are quite strong, and GIFT Nifty, like you indicated, gap up opening. So watch out for a positive start at least. It will be important to see whether that can sustain.
Important to see whether that will sustain. Thanks a lot, Vivek, for that. Now over to Vamakshi, who would list out the stocks that you need to watch out for. Vamakshi, plenty of earnings reactions today. Good morning.
Well, absolutely, Hormaz, but let me first start off with Ultratech Cement. The board has approved acquisition of India Cements. They will be acquiring nearly 32.72% stake from the promoters and its associates at almost 390 rupees per share, which would put the deal at almost 3,954 crores. ICICI Bank reported its numbers. It was a mixed set for the company. Advances and deposits grew somewhere around 15%. NII was slightly lower versus estimates, while net profit came in above expectations. NIMs have seen a slight bit of a moderation on a sequential basis to 4.36%. Dr. Reddy's reported a growth of almost 14% in its revenue. Margins are lower on a YOY basis. They stand at 28.2%, and it is mainly the US and the India business that is driving the growth for Dr. Reddy's this time around. IDFC First Bank reported NII and net profit lower as compared to CNBC TV 18's poll. GNPA and NNPA more or less stable sequentially. Indigo reported a 17% jump in its revenue. EBITDA margin came in lower at 26.4%, and net profit declined by almost 12%. BHEL could see an uptick today, and that is because the company has received an LOI for project worth almost 10,000 crores from Damodar Valley Corporation. Biocon, US FDA has issued Form 483 with 10 observations at the company's Bengaluru facility. Godavari Power has received CECB's permission to expand its iron ore pelletization plant from 2.7 MTPA to 4.7 MTPA. And lastly, let's also focus in on Glenmark Life, and that is because GPCB, that is Gujarat Pollution Control Board, has issued closure notice for the company's Ankleshwar facility.
We'll keep an eye out on all of these names. Vamakshi, thanks a lot for that update. And lastly, Sudarshan joins in with cues from the FNO space. Sudarshan, good morning. 8 straight week of gains. What's the setup looking like on the FNO side?
Morning, Hormaz. That's correct. And we saw a strong start to the August series. And like at the opening levels on Friday, we saw strong buying. It was well supported by a few earnings that we saw on Friday. And even continued buying in both pharma and IT names have led market to a record high. And if we go as per GIFT Nifty, Nifty is set to cross 25,000 for the first time. So what have FIs have done on Friday? Well, they are buying even at these levels, both in the cash market and in the index futures. Also, domestic investors too remain bullish on the market. On Friday, we saw FIs buying shares of more than rupees 2,500 crore and DIs of nearly 2,800 crore in the cash market. And it's the first time in nearly 2 weeks that both FIs and DIs were buyers in the cash market on the same day. And in the index futures, FIs bought shares of more than rupees 4,300 crore and added longs of more than 64,400 contracts and cut short positions by nearly 5,500 contracts. And that takes FI's long positions to 63% with total net long contracts of nearly 1.32 lakhs. On the options front, in the call side, we saw positions being added most in stacks of 24,900 and 24,850. And on the put side, major activities were seen in 24,600 and 24,700. So where do we see resistance and support levels for Nifty? Support remains around 24,600, while resistance is now north of 25,000. On the stocks front, we don't have any stocks in the ban, but two stocks that I'll focus on the basis of major change in the open interest are Federal Bank and Ashok Leyland.
Sudarshan, thanks a lot for that update from the FNO side. And time for a short break here on Power Breakfast. Up next, we get to the latest on the Ultratech Cement's board approval of the India Cements acquisition. Stay tuned, back on the other side. Back with us here on Power Breakfast, and on the big deal story, Ultratech Cement's board has approved the acquisition of a 32.7% stake from promoters of India Cements. Now Nisha is joining in with more details. Nisha, good morning. Another news break confirmed.
That's right. Thanks for that, Hormaz. And yes, the weekend was hectic for Ultratech, India Cements, and all of us there on this large transaction, which was waiting to happen. It does two things. It intensifies the competition in the cement sector between Birla Group as well as Adani Group. And on the other hand, also cements the position of Ultratech as the numero uno position that it has, and that it is a big consolidator in the cement sector and also aggressive in taking on the fight for acquisition. To the news now, Ultratech's board has confirmed and approved the acquisition of India Cements by buying out the promoter stake and the promoter as well as the associate stake, which takes the entire stake along with the financial investor stake that it had bought earlier in June to about 55%. So a majority stake has been captured by Ultratech at close to about 5,800 odd crore rupees. What it does is that mandatorily also trigger an open offer, which it's going to launch in the market. And the price of this particular open offer is the acquisition price from the promoters at 390 rupees per share. Now, on the other hand, the deal valuation as per EV per ton is at $100 per ton. So that is the deal valuation, and the deal is likely to be completed with all the regulatory approvals as well as also the open offer in the 6 months time period. Now, remember that India Cements has the capacity of 14.45 million tons, largely in South India and some part in Rajasthan. It also cements the position of Ultratech in South India, where it does not have a monopoly situation, and therefore the CCI clearance will not be a trouble in this particular transaction. KM Birla on this particular acquisition said that India Cements acquisition accelerates their path to 200 million ton capacity, and it also enables it to serve southern markets more effectively. Now remember that in the past, Ultratech has had to stay away from any acquisition in northern and western parts of the country because it has a monopoly situation, and therefore it would have come under the constraints of Competition Commission. So South India is going to be a playground when it comes to acquisitions and more consolidation when it comes to the buy strategy, while the build strategy of Ultratech remains on track. So it's a very big transaction, and open offer will again increase the acquisition cost probably from from 5,800 to it can go above 7,000 as per tendering.
Nisha, thanks a lot for that update. We'll keep an eye out on Ultratech, India Cements, and of course all of these South India-based cement companies as well. But shifting focus now to the primary markets, Ola Electrics all set to drive into Dalal Street. The initial public offer is set to open on the 2nd of August and will close on the 6th. The IPO will include a fresh issue of equity shares along with an offer for sale of up to 8.4 crore shares of face value of 10 rupees each. They also announced the price band this morning, which was between 72 and 76 rupees a share. Now, time for a short break here on Power Breakfast. Up next, to get you cues from the commodities market. Stay tuned, back on the other side. Welcome back. Manisha Gupta now joins in with all the updates from the commodity space. Manisha, good morning. Oil prices seem to be on a rebound.
Well, yes, after 3 straight weeks of decline, we are looking at some buying coming back, and this is after concerns on tensions between Israel and Iran. And also with the US PCE price index mostly unchanged, there is this supportive factor that you could be looking at the first Fed rate cut coming in for the month of September. The support also is seen in case of gold prices because the US Treasury has declined. There is optimism on rate cut. And then the Indian physical demand in sense of gold really seems to be getting a boost. Also with the price decline and people flocking to buy, Indian gold premiums are at the highest in a decade is how we are looking at. But apart from that, everything else has seen a bit of a decline. The metals are trading in the negative. Copper prices have declined to 4-month lows. We've seen rising inventories, weak China demand. All of that continue to weigh in case of metal prices.
Manisha, thanks a lot for that update. And India's wait for a medal at the Paris Olympic Games ended after 22-year-old shooter Manu Bhaker secured a bronze medal in the women's 10-meter air pistol event. With this, she becomes the first woman shooter from India to reach an Olympic final in an individual event in the last 20 years. And of course, the first woman shooter to win a medal as well. Manu hit the ground running after qualifying for the finals in 3rd place. Now, out of the 22 shots she took, just 7 were in the 9 ring. Manu will also be competing in the women's 10-meter pistol mixed team event today and the women's 25-meter pistol event later in the competition. The gold and silver medal in the event both went to shooters from South Korea. And if there was ever a redemption story, it was this one. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Power Breakfast from me and the team that put this show together. Thank you so much for watching. Bazaar Morning Call takes the action forward.